The moment I saw that bright yellow envelope taped to my door, I knew it wasn't a friendly note. It was from them. The HOA again. They'd already complained about my mailbox, my trash cans, and even the color of my front door. But this time, they went too far. All because I replaced my lawn with stones. They called it a violation against neighborhood harmony. And by the time I finished reading that letter, I realized they were about to fine me $10,000 for my own front yard. Hey everyone, welcome back to HOA Stories. My name's Ryan, and I live in one of those perfect-looking neighborhoods where every lawn looks exactly the same. Green, flat, and soulless. But not mine. I decided to make it different. If you've ever dealt with a petty HOA, if you've ever wanted to fight back, hit that subscribe button and comment "Boo HOA" below. Let's show these rule-obsessed maniacs we're not afraid of their clipboards. Now grab your coffee, because this story gets wild. It all started the summer I got tired of mowing grass. Every weekend felt like a chore I never signed up for. I'd look out the window and see all my neighbors pushing their mowers like robots. Same lawns, same edges, same fake smiles. I thought, why do we all live like this? My house sat on the corner of Maple Grove Drive, a neighborhood so obsessed with uniformity, you could practically get a fine if your grass sneezed the wrong way. We had an HOA president named Linda Carver. Mid-50s, blonde bob haircut, always wore a visor and a clipboard. You know the type, the kind of person who thinks she's running a country instead of a cul-de-sac. She once fined a guy because his garden gnome was too whimsical. I'm not joking. Anyway, that summer was brutal. The heat, the drought, the water restrictions. My lawn looked dead, patches of yellow, brown, and dirt. I tried everything. Sprinklers, fertilizer, even talking nicely to the grass. Don't laugh, I was desperate. But nothing worked. And honestly, I was done. So one day, while scrolling online, I saw a picture of this beautiful minimalist front yard. White stones, desert plants, clean lines, low maintenance, water efficient, elegant. It looked perfect. And more importantly, no mowing ever again. So I ordered the materials, hired a local landscaper, and within a week, my front yard was transformed. No grass. Just smooth white river stones, small succulents, and a few dark boulders for contrast. It looked modern, clean, different. And oh man, the neighbors noticed. At first, a few people actually liked it. Mrs. Patterson from across the street said it looked like something out of a magazine. But others, they whispered. They stared while walking their dogs. And then came Linda. She marched up to my door like she was leading an army. "Ryan," she said, smiling in that fake polite way, "your yard looks interesting." "Thanks," I said, proud of it. "It's low maintenance and eco-friendly." Her smile twitched. "Yes, well, it's also completely non-compliant with our landscaping standards." I blinked. "What standards?" I checked the handbook. It only says lawns must be well kept. "Oh," she said, pulling out her phone. "We recently updated our policy. Lawns must consist of natural green turf grass. Stones, gravel, or artificial turf are strictly prohibited." Updated. That was new. "When did that happen?" I asked. She grinned. "Last week." And that's when it hit me. They changed the rules after I changed my yard. I told her I wasn't changing it back. And she said, "Well then, I'm afraid this will have consequences." A few days later, the letter arrived. Taped right to my door. It wasn't even in an envelope this time, just a bold header. Notice of violation. Immediate action required. They wanted me to restore the yard to green turf within 10 business days, or face escalating fines starting at $500 per day. By the 10th day, that added up to $10,000. I stood there, holding that letter, shaking my head in disbelief. This couldn't be real. Over some stones. But it was. And when I refused to pay, they escalated everything. First came the warning letters. Then came the public shaming, a note in the community newsletter about my unsightly landscape. Then, the threats of legal action. At that point, I realized this wasn't about grass anymore. This was about control. That night, as I sat on my porch surrounded by the soft glow of the sunset reflecting off those white stones, I made a decision. I wasn't backing down. If they wanted war over a yard, they were about to get one. What would you do if your HOA fined you $10,000 just for your front yard design? Comment below. I really want to know how you'd fight back against something like this backhand index pointing down. It started the very next morning. I stepped outside to grab my coffee mug from the porch and saw something weird taped to my mailbox. Another envelope. Another letter. Second notice of non-compliance. They didn't even give me time to breathe. Inside it said I now owed $1,500 in accumulated fines, and that the HOA board would be taking further action if I failed to comply within 48 hours. 48 hours. Who does that? I called the number listed at the bottom. It was Linda's direct line. Linda, I said, trying to sound calm. This is ridiculous. You changed the rules after I updated my yard. You can't fine me retroactively. She said, Ryan, this isn't personal. The HOA has an image to maintain. I laughed. An image? You mean a bunch of cookie-cutter lawns that all look the same? There was a long pause, and then she said it. If you don't want to be part of this community's vision, maybe you should move. Click. That's when I realized this wasn't about a rule violation anymore. This was about breaking me. That day, I started noticing things. Little things. My trash bins suddenly disappeared. The landscaper I hired got anonymous phone calls telling him to stop working with rule breakers. And one morning, I found my stones scattered across the sidewalk, like someone had kicked them during the night. I set up a camera. And sure enough, the footage showed two people around 2 a.m. One tall, one short. Both wearing dark hoodies. They didn't steal anything. They just kicked at the stones, laughed, and walked away. When I showed the video to a cop, he shrugged and said, technically it's not vandalism, no property damage. So I sent the footage to the HOA. Linda's response? We have no record of any members engaging in such behavior. Maybe you should reconsider your design choice before things escalate. Before things escalate. That line stuck with me. Was she threatening me? A week later, they called for a special HOA meeting. The agenda. One homeowner's violation causing neighborhood discord. Guess who the one homeowner was? I walked into the community center that night, and every pair of eyes turned toward me. Whispers everywhere. Crossed arms. Smirks. Linda sat at the center table like she was hosting a courtroom drama. Mr. Ryan, she said, we appreciate your presence. We're here to discuss your non-compliance and its impact on property values. I said, property values? Half the houses here look identical. My yard actually makes the neighborhood look modern. Gasps around the room. Someone muttered, arrogant. Another whispered, he thinks he's better than us. Linda leaned forward. This isn't about design taste, it's about community cohesion. We have standards. I replied, no, you have control issues. That one sentence turned the room into chaos. People started shouting over each other. One guy accused me of being anti-American for not having a green lawn. A woman yelled that her dog didn't like walking past rocks. Someone else said my yard was a safety hazard for kids. I stood there stunned. It felt like a witch trial, and I was the witch. Finally, Linda banged her gavel. This meeting is adjourned. The board will deliver its final decision in writing. 2 days later, that decision arrived. $10,000 fine. Payable within 30 days. And if I didn't pay, they'd place a lien on my house. That's when something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to just pay. I wasn't going to back down. I was going to fight. But not with lawyers. Not with threats. I had something better. I knew every word of that HOA handbook, and I found a loophole they never expected. But that's a story for the next part. If your HOA tried to fine you $10,000 for stones, Would you fight back, or move out? Be honest. Drop your answer below, backhand index pointing down. That night, I sat in my living room, staring at that fine notice for hours. $10,000. Over some stones. Every time I looked at it, my stomach twisted. But anger slowly replaced that fear. I wasn't going to let them win. So I grabbed the HOA handbook, the same one they'd used to bully half the neighborhood, and started reading. Line by line. Page by page. It was boring at first. Rules about mailbox height, garbage placement, exterior colors, all the usual nonsense. But then, on page 47, section 9.2, I found something that made me sit up straight. Homeowners are encouraged to maintain landscaping that is aesthetically consistent with community standards and local environmental regulations. Local environmental regulations. I Googled that phrase immediately. And guess what? Our state, thanks to a drought law passed just 2 years ago, actually encouraged xeriscaping. That means low-water landscaping like stones, gravel, and desert plants. So technically, my stone yard wasn't a violation. It was protected by state law. And the HOA? They were directly violating it. I couldn't help but smile. I had them. The next morning, I printed everything. The law, the state environmental guidelines, and a photo of my yard. I put it all in a binder labeled, "Proof HOA screwed up." I showed up at their next compliance meeting, uninvited. When I walked in, the chatter stopped instantly. Linda looked up. "Oh, Ryan, you weren't on the agenda." I smiled. "Don't worry, I won't take long." I placed my binder on the table and flipped it open. "This," I said, pointing to the printout, "is state law." I read it out loud slowly, just to make sure everyone heard. No HOA shall impose or enforce landscaping rules that prohibit water-efficient designs, including stone or drought-tolerant plants. Silence. A man on the board coughed awkwardly. Someone whispered, "Is that real?" I looked directly at Linda. "It's not just real, it's current. And by sending me fines, you're in violation of the law." Her face went pale. She flipped through her own handbook like she was looking for an escape hatch. "Well," she finally said, "even if that's true, the community's preference is green lawns. The board has discretion." "Preference doesn't override law," I shot back. "Unless the board wants a state complaint filed, which I already drafted." You could hear a pin drop. That moment, watching Linda's fake composure crack, was the most satisfying thing I'd ever seen. But I didn't stop there. I wanted justice. I wanted every neighbor in that room to see what kind of people were running their lives. So I sent an email blast to the entire community. Subject line, "HOA violated state law, know your rights." I attached the same documents. Within 24 hours, my inbox exploded. Some people were angry, but not at me. Turns out, a lot of homeowners had been fined for similar nonsense. A guy named Mark down the street got fined for replacing his sprinklers with drip lines. Another woman got cited for having too many flower pots. The board had been running unchecked for years. Now everyone knew. By the next HOA meeting, the vibe was different. People were whispering again, but this time, not about my rocks. About Linda. When she walked in, no one clapped like before. A few even crossed their arms at her. It was beautiful. The meeting started slow, until I raised my hand. "Yes, Ryan," she said, voice tight. "I just want to thank you," I said calmly, "for motivating me to learn so much about HOA law, and for showing everyone what happens when power gets misused." Someone in the back actually clapped. Then another. Then a few more. Linda slammed her gavel. "This meeting is for official business only." But it was too late. The crowd was already talking. Someone shouted, "We should vote for a new president." Her face went red. She tried to regain control, but it was slipping, fast. That night, I got another letter. This one wasn't taped to my door, it was slipped under it. Handwritten, shaky letters. "Watch your back." No signature. For a second, I laughed. It was so petty it almost felt cartoonish. But then I remembered the 2 a.m. footage of people kicking stones in my yard. And suddenly, it didn't feel funny anymore. I installed more cameras, front, side, backyard. If they wanted to play dirty, I'd be ready. The next morning, a small crowd had gathered in front of my house. Not protesters, just neighbors curious about the guy who beat the HOA. Mrs. Patterson smiled and said, "You really did it, huh?" I said, "Not yet. But it's starting." Because I knew Linda wasn't going to give up easily. People like her never do. They don't like losing power. Especially not to the guy who dared to plant rocks instead of grass. Over the next week, she started sending new letters. Different wording, same message. Each one felt more desperate. Failure to maintain harmonious appearance. Violation of revised section 9.4, pending review. Potential liens under consideration. I almost admired her creativity. But then, something unexpected happened. A state environmental officer showed up at my door. He said, "We received your complaint and we're opening a case." He asked to take pictures of the yard, review the HOA's notices, and speak with their board. I didn't know if it would actually lead to anything. But just knowing the HOA was about to get a visit from a state officer? That felt like sweet, poetic justice. That night, I poured myself a drink, sat on my porch, and looked out at those stones glowing under the porch light. They looked calm, peaceful, like freedom. And for the first time in weeks, I actually smiled. Because I wasn't just fighting for my yard anymore. I was fighting for everyone who'd ever been bullied by a homeowners association that thought it owned people's lives. Would you report your HOA to the state if they broke the law, or would you handle it quietly your own way? Drop your answer below, backhand index pointing down. I'm curious how far you'd go for your freedom. I thought exposing the HOA's hypocrisy would end it. I was wrong. Because when people like Linda lose control, they don't quit. They get creative. At first, it started small, petty stuff. A random inspection of my backyard. A notice about my porch lights being too bright. A complaint that my garbage cans were visible for too long after pickup day. It was obvious they were looking for anything to hit me with. And then, things got darker. One night, I heard a car stop outside around midnight. I peeked through the blinds, headlights off, just sitting there. 5 minutes later, I heard something hit my driveway. The sound of gravel being poured. When I went out the next morning, someone had dumped a pile of dead grass clippings right on top of my white stones. Not a random prank. This was a message. I checked the footage. Same car, same people as before. 2 shadows. One tall, one short. But this time, they didn't wear hoods. It was Gary and Nancy, 2 HOA board members I recognized instantly. I sent the video straight to the local police. They told me they'd look into it. Days passed. Nothing happened. So I posted the video online. I blurred their faces but left enough detail that people in the neighborhood knew exactly who it was. The clip exploded in our community Facebook group. Dozens of comments. People were furious, some defending me, some saying I was making the neighborhood look bad. And right in the middle of the chaos, Linda posted her own comment. Spreading misinformation about HOA board members is grounds for legal action. That's when I realized she wasn't just trying to scare me. She was trying to break me. The next week, I got a letter from a law firm. HOA letterhead on top. Cease and desist, defamation and harassment. They were accusing me of defamation for posting the video. I called the number at the bottom, got their lawyer, some guy named Peterson. He said, if you don't remove that video, the HOA will pursue damages. I laughed. Damages? You mean the truth? He said, this isn't a game, Mr. Ryan. You're making enemies of your own community. That line hit harder than I expected. Because for the first time, I actually started feeling alone. Neighbors who used to wave now avoided me. The kids stopped riding bikes near my house. Even the mail carrier seemed nervous to deliver to my address. One evening, I was walking to my car when I saw something scratched into my driver's side door. HOA rat. The letters were deep, angry, carved with something sharp. My heart sank. That night, I sat on the porch with the lights off, just thinking. The air smelled like wet soil, the sky glowing orange from the street lamps. And I asked myself, was this worth it? $10,000. Dozens of hate letters. Threats. Loneliness. All because I wanted a yard that didn't need mowing. But then I remembered Linda's smirk that first day. The way she said, "Maybe you should move." And suddenly, I wasn't scared anymore. I was angry again. So I decided to hit back. But this time, legally. I called the state environmental officer who had come by earlier. His name was Jim. Cool guy, very by the book. I told him about the harassment, the vandalism, the fines. He sighed and said, "Ryan, if they're retaliating after you reported them, that's a violation in itself." He filed an official retaliation report. And just like that, the investigation deepened. He asked for every letter, every screenshot, every photo. I gave him everything. A few days later, the HOA got a formal notice from the state. They were under review for misuse of authority and harassment. The morning that letter arrived, I saw Linda pacing in her driveway, phone in hand. She looked panicked. And for the first time, small. She saw me watching and yelled, "You think you're clever? You're destroying this community." I shouted back, "No, Linda, I'm saving it." For a moment, we just stood there. Two people on opposite sides of a white picket fence. Both stubborn. Both furious. It was almost poetic. But then something strange happened. That afternoon, I got a knock on my door. It was Nancy, the same board member from the video. Her voice trembled when she said, "Can we talk?" I hesitated, then nodded. She stepped inside, looking around nervously. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said. "Linda told us you were violating federal water codes. She said if we didn't act, the HOA could be sued." I just stared at her. "So you dumped grass on my property?" She looked down. "I'm sorry." She made it sound like you were the enemy. For a second, I almost felt bad for her. Because that's how power works. It convinces good people to do bad things, just to stay on the winning side. Nancy left after a few minutes. And that night, I wrote everything she told me in a statement for the investigation. The next morning, I sent it to Jim, along with the video and the HOA lawyer's letter. He replied, "Thank you. This helps a lot. They've crossed multiple legal lines now." For the first time in weeks, I actually slept peacefully. Because I knew the tide was turning. The next HOA meeting was chaos again, but this time, Linda didn't show up. People were whispering that the state sent her a formal subpoena. That she might lose her position. When someone asked if I'd heard anything, I just said, "She's not the only one who can play by the rules." And for the first time, people smiled back at me. If your HOA started harassing you like this, would you fight legally or just pack up and move away? Comment below. I want to see how many of you would stand your ground, backhand index pointing down. The silence after the storm is always the loudest. For weeks, I'd lived with this constant hum of tension. Letters, fines, threats, whispers. And now, suddenly, it was quiet. Too quiet. No HOA notices. No warnings. No cars parked outside watching me. Just stillness. But stillness doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it means the storm's eye has moved, and it's circling back. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. But this one was different. It wasn't from the HOA. It was from the State Office of Housing Regulation. Inside was a formal document, an update on the investigation. It read, "Following multiple reports and supporting evidence, the HOA Board of Maple Creek Estates is now under review for misconduct, retaliation, and abuse of authority." I almost dropped the letter. They'd done it. The state had officially opened a disciplinary investigation against my HOA. Linda was done pretending now. That evening, she showed up on my doorstep. No warning, no text, just 3 hard knocks. When I opened the door, she was standing there with her arms crossed, jaw clenched so tight it looked like she was holding back a scream. She didn't even wait for me to speak. "You happy now?" she hissed. "You've embarrassed me. You've embarrassed all of us." I stared at her, calm. I didn't embarrass anyone. I exposed what you did. Her voice cracked, not with fear, but anger. You don't understand what you've done. The HOA isn't just a board, it's a system. You can't win against it. I stepped closer. Then maybe the system's broken. For a moment, her eyes softened, just a flash of doubt. Then she whispered, "You think you're a hero, Ryan. But heroes don't last long in neighborhoods like this." She turned and walked away into the night. That was the last time I saw her as the HOA president. A few days later, word spread fast. The state suspended the entire board pending investigation. Every single member, Linda, Gary, Nancy, all of them, stripped of their titles until further notice. It was surreal. People who had once whispered about me were now walking past, smiling awkwardly, trying to be friendly again. Some even said, "Hey man, you were right." Glad someone finally stood up to her. I smiled back, but deep down, I didn't feel victorious. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice. That same week, the HOA mailbox was removed, temporarily. A new letter went out to every resident. All HOA functions are suspended until further administrative restructuring. That meant no more fines, no inspections, no threats. Just freedom. For the first time since moving in, my house actually felt like mine. I sat on my front porch one evening, watching the sunset light up the white stones in my yard. They glowed gold in the fading light, beautiful, quiet, peaceful. I took a deep breath and thought, was this all worth it? And for the first time, my answer was yes. But just as I was beginning to relax, I got a message request on Facebook. The name made my stomach drop. Linda. I hesitated before opening it. The message was short, just one line. "They're going to make an example out of me. But it's not over." I didn't reply. Because, honestly, I didn't know what she meant. 2 days later, my phone started blowing up with messages from neighbors. "Did you see the news? Check Channel 4. Bro, it's about Linda." I turned on the TV. And there she was, in handcuffs. Apparently, during the investigation, they discovered she'd been embezzling HOA funds for years. Thousands of dollars in maintenance fees had gone straight into her personal account. The same account she used to pay for her new patio, her landscaping, and even her trips. The reporter said, former HOA President Linda Matthews faces multiple charges, including fraud and misappropriation of community funds. I couldn't believe it. The woman who fined me for replacing grass with stones was using the HOA to fund her own life. The hypocrisy was staggering. That night, I sat outside again. But this time, I wasn't angry. I just watched the quiet neighborhood around me, the same one that had once turned against me. Now it was calm. No threats. No letters. No Linda. Just peace. A peace I'd earned the hard way. A few days later, Nancy stopped by again. She looked lighter this time, like a weight had been lifted. "They're forming a new board," she said. "Fair elections this time. People actually want you to join." I laughed. "Me? On the HOA?" She smiled. "Yeah. Maybe that's what we need. Someone who knows what it's like to be on the other side." I told her I'd think about it. But deep down, I knew my answer. Because I didn't fight this battle to become them. I fought it so no one else ever had to. The next weekend, I finally did something I'd been waiting months to do. I went to the hardware store, bought a new house number plate, and placed it proudly by the stones in my yard. As I stepped back to look at it, I felt this overwhelming sense of peace. Because that simple, ordinary front yard, the one that had caused so much chaos, was now a symbol of standing up for yourself. And as the sun dipped below the rooftops, I whispered to myself, "You were right to fight back." Would you join your HOA board after going through all that, or would you stay far, far away from them? Let me know what you do in the comments, backhand index pointing down. They say peace feels strange after a long war. And they're right. Because when everything finally calmed down, when the HOA was gone, when Linda was out of the picture, I didn't know what to do with myself. For months I had lived in survival mode. Every knock at the door felt like a threat. Every envelope in the mailbox felt like an ambush. Now, it was just empty silence. The neighborhood looked different too. People started smiling again. Kids played on the sidewalks. The same neighbors who once avoided me now waved. It was strange. Nice, but strange. Nancy stopped by sometimes. We'd talk about how peaceful things had become. She said the state was planning to rebuild the HOA, with new people. Fair elections, she said. This time it won't be corrupt. I laughed. Yeah, right, I told her. HOAs don't change, just the names on the signs. But part of me hoped she was right. Weeks passed. Then one morning, a white envelope showed up in my mailbox. No logo. No warning. Just plain white. Inside was a letter that made my stomach twist. Dear resident, the Maple Creek HOA Reformation Committee invites you to participate in the new board elections. Your name has been nominated by multiple residents. I stared at it, speechless. Me? After everything they'd done? I wanted to laugh. Maybe it was a joke. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. People had seen what I did. I fought back. I stood up. I didn't bend. Maybe they wanted someone who wouldn't abuse power. Still, I wasn't sure if I wanted to be them. That night, I sat outside with a beer, looking at my yard, the same stones that had started this entire war. Each one reflected the porch light. Calm, solid, unbothered. And I wondered, if I don't step in, who will? Who's going to stop another Linda from showing up again? Maybe it was time someone on the board actually cared about fairness. Election day came faster than I expected. The meeting was held in the community center. And for the first time, people actually showed up voluntarily. No threats. No intimidation. Just residents who genuinely wanted to make things right. When they called my name, I felt dozens of eyes on me. Some curious, some proud, a few still skeptical. I took a deep breath and walked up to the front. My name's Ryan, I said. And you all know what happened last year. I'm not here to control anyone. I just want things to make sense again. I want an HOA that protects, not punishes. There was silence for a moment. Then applause. I didn't expect it. But it felt real. For the first time, I wasn't just fighting the HOA. I was rebuilding it. I didn't win president, thank God, but I did get elected as Community Affairs Director. That meant I'd oversee complaints and disputes. Ironic, right? The guy who was once fined for his own yard, now handling everyone else's issues. But maybe that's exactly what was needed. A few weeks into the new board, we were reviewing old HOA files, years of records, scanned letters, fines, and receipts. That's when I found something strange. An envelope marked "Private" in Linda's handwriting. Inside were several documents, but one caught my eye. It was a landscaping approval form, signed by Linda herself. And next to her name was my property address, dated months before she ever fined me. Which meant she knew I had approval to replace my lawn. She just ignored it. On purpose. My chest tightened. All this chaos, all those fines, the legal threats. It was never about the lawn. It was personal. I sat there staring at that paper, feeling this strange mix of anger and closure. She'd been targeting me from the start. Not because of the stones, but because I'd once embarrassed her. Months before the lawn incident, I'd spoken up at a neighborhood meeting. I said the HOA was too strict, too invasive. Linda didn't like that, and that was all it took. I turned in the document to the new board. They logged it as evidence for the ongoing investigation. I thought that was it. Case closed. But the next morning, I woke up to something strange. A package on my doorstep. No label. No return address. Inside was a small gray rock, smooth, round, familiar. And a note. You think it's over, but it's just getting started. No name. No handwriting match. But I knew exactly who it was from. I went inside, locked the door, and sat down. My heart was pounding. Was Linda trying to scare me from wherever she was? Or was someone else picking up where she left off? I didn't know. But one thing was certain. The HOA might have fallen, but its ghost was still haunting this neighborhood. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me tense. Every creak in the house felt like a whisper from the past. But as I looked out the window at my yard, calm, steady, shining under the moonlight, I realized something. Fear only works if you let it. Linda wanted to control people through fear. But fear loses power when you stop running from it. So I opened the door, walked out barefoot, and placed that gray stone right back into the yard. Like a trophy. 'Cause this time, it didn't scare me. It reminded me that no matter what happens, I won't bend again. If you were Ryan, would you have joined the new HOA board after everything that happened? Or would you have walked away forever? Comment your take below, backhand index pointing down. It had been months since I got that stone on my doorstep. No more threats. No more letters. No new drama. Just silence again. But silence, in this neighborhood, never stays innocent for long. One night, around 10 p.m., I heard a knock at the door. Not loud. Just steady. Slow. Intentional. 3 times. I froze. The last time someone knocked like that, it was Linda. I peeked through the window. No one there. But something was lying on the porch. A manila envelope. My heart sank as I opened the door and picked it up. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Final notice. Pending restitution hearing. But it wasn't from the old HOA. It was from the new one. The one I was on the board for. I stormed into the next board meeting, waving the letter in the air. "What the hell is this?" I demanded. The others looked at each other nervously. Nancy spoke first. "Ryan, that wasn't from us." She slid her phone across the table. It was a news alert. Linda Matthews released early due to overcrowding. My stomach dropped. She was out. And from the look in Nancy's eyes, she knew Linda wouldn't stay quiet for long. The next few weeks were a blur of rumors. Neighbors said they'd seen Linda driving around. Others swore they'd gotten strange letters, unsigned but typed in the same format the HOA used to send. I wanted to believe it was coincidence. But deep down, I knew better. People like Linda don't disappear. They just change tactics. Then, one morning, I found a note taped to my door. "Enjoy your pretty rocks while you can." No signature. No trace. But the message was clear. I reported it to the local police. They logged it, nothing more. Still, something inside me had shifted again. That quiet peace I fought for was slipping. A week later, the new HOA called for a full community meeting. Attendance was mandatory. When I arrived, the room was packed. People looked anxious. Whispers everywhere. The chairperson, a guy named Mark, stood at the front with a grim expression. He cleared his throat. "We've discovered something unsettling," he said. During the transition, several archived documents went missing from the HOA storage. Everyone murmured. Then he looked right at me. "Ryan, your old landscaping file was one of them." My blood ran cold. Someone had taken it, the file that proved Linda's corruption, the one that cleared my name. "Gone," Mark continued. "And last night, someone broke into the HOA office. Security footage caught part of it." He hit play. The footage flickered, grainy black and white, but there she was. Linda. Sneaking through the door, flashlight in hand, grabbing files. Like she was erasing her past one paper at a time. The entire room gasped. After that night, we didn't hear from her again. No letters. No threats. Nothing. It was like she vanished into thin air. But I still couldn't shake the feeling she was watching. Sometimes, late at night, I'd see headlights pause outside my house. Then slowly drive away. Other times, I'd find small things out of place. My gate slightly open, mailbox ajar, porch light flickering. Little reminders that control doesn't always die. Sometimes it lingers. A month passed. Then one day, Nancy called me. Her voice was shaking. "You need to see this," she said. I drove to her place, and she showed me an article online. Former HOA president found dead, police suspect foul play. The photo was grainy, but it was her, Linda, found near an abandoned construction lot just outside town. No one knew what happened. No suspects. No witnesses. Just gone. That night, I sat outside again. Same spot. Same stones. But this time, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt final. The wind was calm. The yard glowed under the soft light of the porch. I thought about everything that happened, the fights, the fines, the fear. And somehow, it all ended right here, in this quiet little yard. I realized something then. This wasn't just about grass or stones. It was about freedom. About standing up when no one else does. Even when they call you crazy. Even when they turn against you. Because the second you stop standing up for yourself, you lose everything. Nancy joined me that evening. We didn't talk for a while, just sat there, watching the sunset paint the sky in gold. Finally, she said softly, "You know, this neighborhood finally feels normal again." I smiled. Maybe now it can be. She looked at me. "So, you staying on the board?" I laughed quietly. "Nah. I've done my time." Weeks later, I got another letter. But this one made me smile. Community Appreciation Award for standing up to corruption. They'd named the park walkway after me. Ryan's Path. I walked down it the next day, and for the first time I felt real peace. Because no matter how dark it got, the truth had a way of shining through. And as the sun dipped behind the roofs, lighting up the stones in my yard one last time, I whispered, "This is how you win." If you were Ryan, and your biggest enemy suddenly vanished, would you feel relief or fear? Let me know in the comments, backhand index pointing down.